All right, I'm going to continue on, and the hope is that before the next break, if there is one, we'll finish this now. Okay, there's about 15 pages left in the chapter. So, one of the most important concepts, probably the most important concept that we've talked about thus far in the 4 days we've meeting is model binding. Okay? So the author says the first overload renders the same view as before. The second overload is more interesting because of the parameter. Given that the action method will be invoked for a post and that the guest response is a C# class, it says, how is there a connection? In other words, how does the system know what to do? All right, and this is one example of what's referred to as model binding. Notice what it says here. It's an extremely useful MVC feature whereby incoming data is parsed and the key value pairs in the request are used basically kind of like as a map as far as what to do. So it says here the process is the opposite of using the helper methods. That's not important. But as it says here, with model binding, the names of the input elements are used to set the values of the properties in an instance. So it knows by looking at that what it's supposed to do. All right. They mention it's a powerful and customizable feature. It eliminates the grind and toil of dealing with HTTP requests directly. And even if you think you have in my classes or whatever, dealing with HTTP requests, there's so much stuff that comes in them. It can be a real pain. So it says in this case, the guest response object that is passed as the parameter is automatically populated with the data from the form fields. So it's another one of those things we don't have to do. It's done for us behind the scenes, so to speak. All right. So it says here the second overload also demonstrates how to tell MVC to render a specific view. Okay? So it says here is the relevant statement. And it says this call to the view method tells MVC to find and render a view named thanks and to pass the guest response information to it. So it doesn't have to do anything extra. All right. So to create the view, it says right click on any of the home controller methods, choose add, and what comes up, we're going to create this thing called thanks. All right. So again, come back into here. Doesn't matter really where we do it. Right mouse click, add view. This one though is going to be called thanks. I believe it is an empty without model. I don't remember if it said it in here or not. Oh, it does want a strongly typed one, so I'm wrong. Called thanks that uses the guest response model and that is based on the empty template. So in other words, we do want to come in here. We do want empty and not empty model. And in here, we want to base it again on the guest response. All right, so the exact same way we did the last one, just the name has changed. All right, I think we leave all the options off. I want to double check and see if it says to add any, but I don't remember it saying anything like that. Okay. So we're going to have to add the markup that's shown then on page 36, the extra markup in just a minute. So if you're here, click add. That's going to create the beginning for us. Okay. Open up a line by your div in between your two div tags. Go back to here. Oops, to here. And what do we have? Well, we're going to have an H1 tag that says thank you, and it'll have your name in it. All right, it's grabbing that name. Do you understand? It's grabbing that name off the form. Does that make sense to people? All right. Then it says if will attend is true, in other words, if you click the yes radio button, it'll say it's great that you're coming. The drinks are already in the fridge. If you click the no, I won't be there, it'll say sorry to hear you can't make it, but thanks for letting us know. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, it's fairly, when you think about it, it is at least fairly straightforward. All right. But in order to do this, when you think about it, what did it need? It needed this. All right, it needed the name, and it needed the will attend. But those properties, although those properties are declared in our guestresponse.cs file, they're not set in there. They're set in our RSVP form.cs HTML file. That's the correlation between all this. And you want to read it, that's what they say. So let's give it a whirl. Come back into your code, do a file, save all, run it. When it comes up, click the RSVP Now link. All right, comes up. It's going to take whatever you put in here for a name. I'll do it first and say, yes, I will be there. Submit it. Okay. I'm going to click my back button, and I'm going to change it from yes to no. All right, and submit it again. Sorry here, but you get this, the thank you both ways. I'm going to do it again and click choose an option. All right, it remembered what was in there previously. Okay, but when you think about it, does this make sense to everybody? Remember how we said that this is a Boolean, but it had that question mark by it, meaning it could be null? Right now it's null. Does that make sense to you? All right. But the reason it said something is previously I had said, no, I won't be there, so it cached in memory that response, and it just brought that out. All right. I don't know if I would refresh this. I have no idea what it's going to do, but we'll see. All right. It still has it in there, it looks like. But probably the reason it did that is it's hitting the else. So even if it's not true, even if you left it as nothing, they're right now thinking that you're not coming. So to make a long story short, I suppose you shouldn't answer it unless you know whether you're coming or you're not coming. All right. Now we come back in, and now we're going to add some validation. Part of the reason that I did this in the order in which I did it, in other words, going through that last project, you've seen a lot of this stuff. There's not been a lot so far, other than maybe going from one .cs HTML file to another .cs HTML file. But you've seen things, for example, like validation. As it says, ASP.NET supports declarative validation rules defined within attributes. You already know this. If you look up on the screen here, we need to add that using statement. You know that already. So I'm going to go and grab that statement. Copy it to the clipboard. Go back to the code. Find our guest response model here. Add that using statement to the top, bottom, wherever. There it is. It'll go gray right away because we're not using it yet. Then go back here, and we're changing. All right. Copy that and change these 4 lines that are currently in here to this. Now, I don't know if I have to do this or don't have to do it, but first of all, I like to take each one of these fields, all right, and there's name, there's email. You don't have to do this. There's phone. But the point is, notice one thing. What have we done here? Required, 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 required. So we made every field that's in there, all 4 of them, required fields. If you leave off a name, you should get please enter your name. If you leave off an email address, etc. All right? Now, all they've done here is they have, if you look on the screen here at what's blue, they've created a regular expression. That's not, what they have there is not a great check for an email. An actual regular expression for an email is huge. All right? And it says here, if you don't have a phone number in there, put in a phone number. Please look on the screen. What's the problem with that validation? It's required, right? Is it anything else? Can I put hello in there? So we could have gone in and done a regular expression for that as well. If you've never seen this, hopefully I showed you this first semester. I may not have, I don't know. But if you go out to HTML5pattern.com, it doesn't show you everything, but for example, if I go to phones, it shows you what you typically use for a United States phone number. Okay? And they even have a thing where you can try it out. They've got different types of phone numbers, etc. Okay? There's other ones like this. I just have used this one quite a bit. All right. Validations are shown in bold. We already talked about the nullable bool. I already mentioned that to you. Okay? And the author says, I want to check to see if there has been a validation problem. Guess what? You know what this is. We've already talked about the model state dot is valid. All right, again, this is why I decided to show that to you first. So, in our home controller, RSVP form, in the post, we're going to change this. So back to the home controller, back to the RSVP form post, rather than just the return. Notice how it does that? Never a bad idea. In fact, some packages, I know it used to do this. We don't need that anymore. It used to always throw to-do stuff in there, just to let you know if you put a comment or whatever, yeah, there's more you got to do later. You really can remove it now. All right. So if all 4 of those fields met the validation criteria, bring up thanks.cshtml and pass to it the guest response information. If it did not, just return the view, so get you back to where you were. All right. And again, you don't like my explanation, go ahead and read that one that's right there. All right. So it says just displaying the form when there is an error is not helpful. This is somewhat new from what we saw before. So please look at this. We're going to use another HTML helper that's called HTML.validation summary. Look on the screen. Don't worry about it right now. A validation summary puts all of your errors either at the top of your screen or at the bottom of your screen. If you don't have a summary, you'll get the errors, but they'll either be on the side or underneath. Some people like to have all of their errors in the same place. So not only are we going to put this in, but when we get done, we're going to add some CSS, because right now that doesn't really denote error. So we're going to come back in and we're going to make it red and bold and a few other things. All right, so that it stands out a little bit. So really the only thing you have to do to get that put in there, as it says, is to come back to our RSVP form.cs HTML file, and at the beginning of the using statement, we want to add this, which says, provide for us this HTML validation summary. All right, so I'm going to go back to response form.cs HTML, and at the beginning of our using statement here, we add that. That's all you got to do. All right, so notice now I'm going to save this, do a save all, and I'm going to run it. I'm going to run the same exact test. All right, I'm going to run the same exact test that the author just did. That is, when this comes up, I'm going to click the RSVP form hyperlink that comes in, and then when the form comes up, I'm going to put in absolutely nothing and see if it gives me all 4 errors. Okay, does that make sense? All right. Now, when you're doing this, I'm going to tell you this, and if you listen to what I say and you, well, duh, good for you, really. But you should test here every combination there is. You should always double check. You shouldn't say, well, it worked fine. When I put nothing in there, it gave me all my errors. No, you check every combination. You put it, you leave off just this one, just this one, just this one, etc. Also notice, now we're not accepting null. Because when you are validating a Boolean field, here's the hardest question you've been asked all semester. What are the only 2 values possible for a Boolean field? True and false. Null is not an option. All right? So when we're actually checking it and we're putting in checks, right now we're not accepting null. So if you've gone to the trouble where you're going to click a submit button, you have to either say, and notice, as soon as I say yes, I'll be there, that error is gone. All right? Again, I can just hit FFF. Now the phone's there. Email address. If I do put in one that's bad, hello. See that? Please enter a valid email address. But if I say like hello@goodbye.com, that worked. Does everybody understand? Looking at this, all that check does is it says, is the email address that we put in, not does that address exist, is it put in a valid format? That's all it's checking. That's it. And if I go back in there and add my name, boom, now everything's there. All right, boom. But unlike what you saw before, when I put that in and we didn't fill in the yes or no, I'm not coming, it just said, sorry, you're not going to be there. Now that won't happen. All right. So again, I can't say this kind of thing too many times. If you're a professional programmer, just testing, you know, there's probably, I don't know, 4 times 3, there's probably 24 tests. If you've ever done things with permutations and whatever, if you ever done anything with statistics, there's 4 possibilities. 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 would give you 24. So there's probably 24 different possibilities there. You should test all 24. All right? For some reason, they should all pass. All right? But you're the programmer, you test one of them, now something screws up, it's your head. All right? No one cares. Hey, the software screwed up. They won't fire the software. All right? All right, now as it says, we want to highlight the invalid fields. Okay? In English, what we want to do, and I'm going to show you something that's not in the book. So you may want to look, you may not care, but I just want to show it to you anyway. All right? We want to add this stuff that's on the bottom of page 40, this stuff. We want to add this to our styles.css file. All right? So I'm going to put it in, but I want to show you something. That is, let's see, do we have a content folder? I don't see one. So I'm going to create one. So I'm going to right mouse click right here. I'm right mouse clicking on the name of my project, not the solution name, the project name. And I'm going to choose add, new folder, not new ASP.NET folder, add folder, and we're going to call this, because it's called by default, not by default, but it's by convention, content. Then inside of there, we are going to right mouse click, choose add, choose new item, and I believe, let's see, I don't remember what it's under. Is it web? Yeah, it's under web. We want Stylesheet. By convention, I don't know why they call it Stylesheet 1. I don't know why. But most of the time you will call yours style. You don't have to do that. But it is just convention to do that. So we click add. Okay? Right now there's nothing in there. I think you'd agree with that, other than an empty body tag. I'm going to remove that, paste in that stuff that was there before. So what do we have? If there's a field validation error, we want that to print out in red. Make sense? If there's no error, don't display any summary. All right? If there is an input validation error, put a border around it and make it this color. And for all of our summaries, bold it and make it red. So what's the difference? Well, you'll already know it, but I'm not going to run it yet. Right now, would you agree? The system doesn't even know that this exists. All right? Do you remember when we have this file right here? Where is it? Oh, we'll probably have to add it. That's fine. Let's look at this. Okay? It says we want to add this, and we want to add it to our RSVP form.cshtml file. Now, look on the screen, please. Remember, we're not using the layout, correct? Yes? If we were, we'd have to either add, or we'd already have the shared thing, and we'd have the underscore layout.cshtml file in it. Make sense? Reason I'm telling you that is, if everybody is using that same layout, which quite often you might have in a project, especially if you don't have that many pages, you'd put that in there, the styles.css. We want to put it in our, I think it was the RSVP form they said. Yeah, .cshtml. Now I'm going to show you something. It's not going to gee-wow whiz you, but I just want to show it to you. All right? We can come in here, and in our head section, we can type the tag, right? Link, rel equals style sheet, href equal, not a problem. But if you didn't know this, I can click on this file, and I can drag it right there, and I can let the system write it for me. The good news about doing it that way is the path will always be correct. If you put it in yourself, you may screw up the path. We're human. Everybody does it. So it's much easier to do it like that. Okay? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to save all, run it one more time, and again try it. Put nothing in there, and I want to make sure that it comes out red, bolded, etc. Run a couple more tests on it like we just did. Make sure at least, hopefully, everything is looking the way that it should be looking. All right, RSVP now. I'm going to leave them all off. So there you go. That's what we got. All right. As we come in there and I put my name in, notice the coloring goes away and the error. If I put in an invalid email, the message changes and it's still in color. Once I put in something valid, the coloring goes away, etc. But again, That now is okay. No, I can't come. Okay? All right? I would recommend, you don't have to do this, but if I were to have been writing this, I would have put in another regular expression pattern for the phone number. All right? The easiest type of expression pattern, just so you see it, that you can put in for a phone number would look like this. There's other ones, but I'm going to make it simple as possible. And that just says number, 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 dash, number, 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 dash, number, 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 number. Does that make sense? Now, if you want to go real nuts over it, you can literally come in there and do like DDDD minus DDD, etc. Okay, you could do it like that too. This to me it makes sense looking at it. You may or may not agree, but I think the author, for completeness, really should have entered that in there also. Okay? Then you could have put, something like, please put the phone number in this format. All right? So again, they show it right there. I showed you some examples, okay? All right. So, where are we? We're on the bottom of page 42, which means we've got about 7 or 8 more pages to go. The rest of the chapter discusses Bootstrap. All right? Why am I telling you that? All right. First of all, I'm going to recommend that if you want to go through this book and you want to get the most out of it, that you use what the authors put in here. If we went out to the package manager and we searched for the most up-to-date version of Bootstrap, it would be like 4.3.1. Does that make sense? He's using 3. Why am I telling you that? Because he's using a couple features in here that if you don't use version 3, they won't work. You won't get errors, they just won't work. You ask it to do something, it won't do it because the feature no longer exists in version 4 of Bootstrap. Okay? They've got things that were called like wells and panels, which you may or may not have heard of. All right? They got rid of those between version 3 and version 4 and replaced them with cards. Well, if in here, if any of our Bootstrap mentions, all right, mention wells and panels, okay, and you've got version 4, it won't render, right? What I'm hoping, and I'm still working on the project we're going to do as a class, all right, with multiple tables, etc. I'd like to use version 4 for that, all right? And part of what, I mean, we're going to create a butt ugly project, just so you know. Why? Because I want you to make it yours. And one way for you to make it yours is to sit and work with colors and to work with fonts and to work with a lot of other stuff. All right? So we'll do this. We're going to use his line, exactly what he has here. So what I'd like you to do is copy that line here on the bottom of page 42. Go back to your program. You've done this before. Tools, NuGet Package Manager, Package Manager Console. Come up to the console here, paste that in. Again, it's install minus package space minus version space 3.0.0 space Bootstrap. Bless you. Hit enter. And so far it's all black in the text. There, it worked. But what I have is version 3. Now, just so you know this, you probably have figured it out already anyway, but if I come over here and I go back to Package Manager and I go back to Manage NuGet Packages, I can prove that. Because I can go over to where I've got installed, okay, and it looks like it might have already had 4.3 in there. So I may have to uninstall that. I don't know. I didn't realize that was there by default. Probably I should uninstall that one and install. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm going to leave it the way it is, and we're going to run this, but some of this may not look the way it does in the book. If it does not, I would strongly suggest you click on Bootstrap, go here and here, find the uninstall down here, all right, and uninstall it. Now it says here installed version here. Oh, I'm looking here. Maybe it is 3. I'm not sure, but we're going to try it. I will tell you, when I did this by myself over the summer to see what would happen, I purposely used this, and I just grabbed the one 431. That's how I know a lot of the stuff didn't render correctly. All right? I know I make enough mistakes with you. Sometimes, believe it or not, I try to make mistakes because I want to see what's going to happen if I do something. All right? All right. I don't think I have to explain that to you, you know, the NuGet stuff, etc. I've used the latest version, good. The author says here in this note that's on the top of page 43 that the reason that he is using Bootstrap is to illustrate how readily the HTML generated can be used between CSS and JavaScript, etc. Okay, plus he's trying to sell another one of his books. Okay, so styling. What the author does in the rest of the chapter here on page 43, on page 45, on page 47, and on page 49 is he goes in and on those 4 pages adds different types of Bootstrap. All right? I'm going to do that, but I just wanted to give you an overall thing of what he's doing. All right? I think what I'm going to do, and I just, in my own mind, going back and forth over this. First of all, I mentioned this to you the first or second day, saying it again. All right? We are going to create a project. I don't know if I have it up still or not. I probably don't. I don't. But I may have shown you this already. I don't know. But if I did, you're seeing it a second time. Okay? We're going to create this as a class. Okay? And when you look at it, this is Evan did this. He did a really fine job on it. I added a little bit to it. In other words, I made all the buttons and stuff work. He didn't have that stuff working. So this actually goes out to the App Store and in a window to Google Play, etc. What is it? What is Rankin? You know, it's Evan, so he has to do Rankin stuff. You can tell him I said that, even if you ever see him. It's okay. This is a guy talking about Rankin. I don't, you know, when we do this, if you want to put a different thing in there, you can, etc. This will allow me to show you a few things you may or may not know. These were not all the same size, but when you look at them, they all do come up the same size. All right, and it looks, not that it's fantastic, but it looks pretty decent. All right, some more stuff here. These are what are called cards. These replace those wells and panels that are shown in our book. All right, some reviews. Let's see. The newsletter. So there's a little bit of stuff with forms. I added this to show you could put JavaScript in here. So it literally rather is running. Doesn't look like it's running here, but notice 15, 19, 18. If I refresh and go back down to the bottom, 15, 20, 39, just to show you could put that in. Pardon? Could you? Sure. Yeah. There's so much stuff that's built into Bootstrap. We could make a whole course on Bootstrap. We really could. All right. And we're going to go over this. And what I'm going to do, I've got the code. All right. It's about 9 or 10 pages. With 11 of you, 11 times 10 divided by 2 is 55. I'm not burning that much paper. All right. So just do me a favor. If you don't want it when we're done, throw it out in there. Don't leave it on the desk, because the next morning Mr. Corrigan's the one who comes in. And if he sees a lot of extra paper, then he starts asking me why I'm printing out so much. All right? But if you throw it out, he doesn't seem to care. And actually, even better than that, if you don't know this, there's a recycle box next door. That's actually the best thing you can do with your paper, if you don't mind. But what I think I'll do, all right, after we get done with this chapter, we're not done yet, I get it, but I'll give you all a hard copy of that. Then I'm going to go through it. Some of you like to work ahead. Like this guy right here was working on his book. He's in chapter 8 already, so, I'm just kidding. But, some people like to work ahead. Some people type faster than others. Some people would like to watch somebody else doing it and then do it themselves. Everybody's different. But at least you're going to have you're going to have a copy of it. And I will give you that before the end of the class. By tomorrow, when you come in here, I'll write up a little something. I don't know what. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change, because right now, if I go out to Inside Rankin, there's a Chapter 2 homework. I'm going to make it so there's 2 Chapter 2 homeworks. One is the thing we're working on right now, all right? And the other one is going to be, as I mentioned to you, you updating your portfolio and rewriting it in Bootstrap. Even if it doesn't look that great, at least you've given it an, the old college try, all right? So you've given it an effort, all right? And I want you to do that. Okay, so that said, I'm jumping back now, and I'm going to come into the index.cs HTML file, and I'm just going to grab everything, all right, through the body there. Notice what we're doing here. We're adding the Bootstrap CSS and the Bootstrap theme CSS. We're adding some of our own CSS, all right, and we're using CSS classes here and here, all right? So again, I'm going, this was index.cs HTML. Start in the, I think I did it starting from the head section, but we'll find out. Okay. So that's done. I'm not explaining this because I think we've already talked about this kind of stuff. The author talks on page 44 about exactly what he's doing. All right? So the first thing that did was, if you look on page 44 here, notice how this is gray now? The button looks a little more buttony, etc. It's using Bootstrap colors for the buttons, etc. Then we go to the RSVP form to style that. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start in the head right here. So like I said, I'm going to start in the head and keep going down. All the way through the bottom of the body. Again, this is RSVP form.cshtml. So I'm going to grab that, bring up RSVP form, highlight in there everything from the head through the bottom of the body. Paste this in. Okay. I think it's all right. Go back to the handout here. Again, if you want an explanation, it's in here. All right. The author does mention that he created a C# anonymous object, but he's going to talk about it in Chapter 4. All right, so I'll hold off until he does. Then we've got the thanks view, starting on the bottom of page 46, and the code is on page 47. So again, I'm going to grab everything from the head to the bottom of the body, copy it to the clipboard, go into my thanks.cs HTML, and do the same thing. Then finally, he talks about completing the example. All right. So it says the last requirement is to email completed RSVPs to the party organizer. This, to be honest with you, I believe this does not work. Does anybody know anything about SMTP? Simple Mail Transfer Protocol? In order for this kind of thing to work, Rankin would have to give me permission to give you permission to subvert the regular, inside rankin.org, the way you do emails, to do this. I don't think they do it. When I tried showing people this at where I used to work at BTC, I made some of my own hacks and I did stuff I wasn't supposed to do. I didn't know, though, when I did it, that the IT department knew what I was doing. So I got called in and yelled at. So I asked them about doing it, and they said, if you want, I'll make you this deal. We'll open it up for an hour and let the students do it to make sure it works. And then they never can use it again. And I said I didn't know what they got out of that, so I just didn't have them do it. So the point is, we can put this into the body of our thanks. All right, we want this right up above the div, so we can put this in there, but I don't believe it's going to work, is what I'm telling you. I would put money on it that it's not going to work. But for completeness, it's now been added anyway. All right. So notice, if you're ever doing something like that, what do we have here? Well, an SMT server. This is what they'd have to tell us. They'd have to let us know what port they're using, what their username is, what their password is. I've got a feeling that the people in Rankin IT would not want to give me that information so I could share it with you. Taking a wild guess there. So it very well might happen that we get this. Sorry, we couldn't send the email to confirm this. Okay? What the author of this book does, just so you know, to get around that, when we write the sports store application, he sets it up so that when you tell it to send something off like that, it sends the information, but it sends it to your own machine on your C drive as a text file. We could do something like that too. Yes?
How are you copying something to PDF or white space?
I'm not trying to do anything special. I'm just highlighting it, right mouse clicking, and choosing copy. So if I am doing something special, I don't know what it is. All right. So with all those changes put in there now, let's do one more file, save all, and let's take a look at what we have. Because that's the end of the chapter. Okay, you see the gray background, you see the button. This does, let's face it, I don't know if you agree or not, but this looks a lot better than a lone hyperlink. And hopefully you're all aware of this. When you style buttons in Bootstrap, you can make, just by saying that it's a hyperlink, you can make a hyperlink look just like a button, which is what we did here. There's our form. I don't particularly like it. I wouldn't have done it like that, but it's okay. See that? Sorry, we couldn't send the email. All right. So let's come back. I'm going to throw a few of these things out of there. Choose an option. Okay. So right now we've overridden. Look on the screen, please. We've overridden, haven't we? Remember, it's not red anymore and it's not bold. We have to figure out where that's coming from and overwrite that with our own CSS. All right. It's not that big a thing, but just for completeness, I wanted to mention that to you. All right. But it does look more professional overall than it did before. All right. So that's basically it. All right. The author says in this chapter, we created a new MVC project. We constructed a simple data entry application, etc. When we go into the next chapter, we're going to go over the MVC pattern. I'm going to ask, and I'm going to do it with you, but basically, for part of the homework for each chapter, if the author creates a project, we're going to create a project, the same one. I still think that's the best way. You know, to me, that's what symbolizes the technical college. All right, we do. Whereas in 4 years, when I've gone to 4-year schools, that's we tell. All right, I want you to do. All right. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to come in here, and for that example that I showed you before, this thing, okay, I'm going to grab my code. Please look on the screen. The last time I'll tell you, just so you know this, we did this for those, I think I told you, for those students, the middle school students. The reason I'm telling you that is we're going to put the CSS inline. See that? And we've got the JavaScript that I used at the bottom to do this. I put it inline. So we're going to do that. That said, to write your stuff the right way on your portfolios, if you're using JavaScript, that should not be inline. Your CSS should not be inline. They should be in external files, so I'll expect that from you. Any questions on that? All right. So I'm going to find this. If you want to get started, you can. All right. Yeah, Mr. Corrigan has left, but I'm still not supposed to let you leave. Well, can't we just go home now? I'm not, so you're not. How's that? And if you don't know the rules, you know, you probably all do, but anyway, because I've got, you know, like Luke has mentioned to me, hopefully it's okay I'm saying this, Luke, can he leave 5 or 10 minutes? He needs it for a job thing. That's okay. If he said, I got to leave today a half an hour early, I'd have to mark him tardy. That's a ranking rule. And I'll tell you, if I don't do it, most mornings Mr. Corrigan checks everybody's attendance. And he'll say to me, hey, I noticed, I don't know his name, but I noticed one of your students left at 3:30. You didn't mark anybody tardy. So I have to go back in then and make them tardy. Okay? So if you leave more than 10 minutes early or you come more than 10 minutes late, it's a tardy. So, you know, that makes sense to everybody? All right, I'm going to find this right now, wherever I've got it, and I'll print out a copy for everybody. Unfortunately, like I said, it's 461 lines long. All right, a lot of it is because when I did stuff, I was showing this to kids. Normally, I wouldn't put that on 6 lines. All right, but I was showing it to kids. All right, I thought at least, what we did after we showed them this is we had the kids make their own stuff. So in other words, we did this, but they put their own stuff in there. For being like 11 or 12 years old, they made some phenomenally good-looking sites. One kid created a GoFundMe page because he wants to buy a Lamborghini. And I thought it was actually pretty good. All right, 201. Preferences. Landscape. No. I'll give this out as it comes out.